district.
Are you liking the new job?
I am, very much so. I'm finally, it's been a month.
Good evening, and good evening, residents of Litchfield, and welcome to the October 4th, 2017 school board meeting. I'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I must have my old password still saved in there.
That's right. Do you have any revisions to the agenda?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Just so the public knows, Tina Harrison will not be with us this evening. She is recuperating at home, and Derek Barker, as far as I know, will be here at some point. He's the one you won't recognize when he gets here. Summary of non-public actions from September 20, 2017. There were no non-public actions. Brings us to presentations and recognitions. I have the honor of letting you know that the Scouts, leaders, and members of the committee for Boy Scouts Troop 11 take great pleasure in announcing that, having completed the requirements for having been examined by an Eagle Scout Board of Review, Ryan James Blow was found worthy of the rank of Eagle Scout on August 16th, 2017. So a big congratulations to Ryan James Blow. Very nice. Correspondence, there were two. Michelle, I don't know if you received both of them or not.
Okay.
I know one you received. Just give me one moment, I'll pull them up.
Natalie Hurt.
One was from Natalie Hurdy, and there was she had seen at our last meeting that we were going to be discussing the CHS diplomas and the possibility of well, what our conversation will be is whether or not there would be different criteria for different elements as far as diplomas. I guess that's something she's been looking at, and says she has spoken with Mr. Lonergan about. It's pretty lengthy.
Is that Michelle?
We'll go. Yeah, she had sent it to her
I do
also.
have that, yes.
Yeah, the other one from Joycelyn.
That I don't have.
Yeah, I'll forward that one to you. It was from Jocelyn Rajo. And hers just simply is, Dear Litchfield School Board, it is my understanding that there is a talk about adding full-day kindergarten to our public school program. I fully support the endeavor. As we just moved into town, we have a 4.5 and a 2-year-old and are looking at our kindergarten options for next fall. I would be happy to do whatever I can to support the initiative, and I believe with the fact that few people can live on a one-income household. If we want young families to continue to move to Litchfield, this would be a huge benefit. Thank you for your time, and please let me know if there's more we can do. So I'll forward that one to you, Michelle.
Okay, thank you.
And I just forwarded one to the school board and to Superintendent and Michelle from a citizen from Tammy Hoffman on the Chromebooks that she'd sent to me that told me I could share with the board, so.
Yeah, I just saw that, John. Thank you.
I'll bring us to superintendent comments.
I just would like to talk about October 1 enrollments. Those are our official enrollments on an annualized basis. And our enrollment numbers are pretty much in line with the projected enrollment numbers. The total number of students at GMS is 422, LMS is 421, and CHS is 466. Total district enrollment was 1309. To put some context around that, since over the last 8 years, the district has lost a total of 279 students from the district. From year to year, the high school is down 4 students. The middle school is down 36 students. Excuse me, the high school is down 4 students, the middle school is down 36 students, and GMS is down 4 students. However, looking out into the future, if we look at the number of students in grades, in the earlier grades or cohorts, we don't have, through the first 5 grades, well, let's say K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the largest cohort we currently have is 90 students in the 3rd grade. Whereas if I go from the 6th grade through the 12th grade, the smallest cohort of students I have is 108 students. So no matter how you slice it, you're going to have, starting over the next 7 years, a significant drop in total enrollment at the middle school and total enrollment in the high school. Probably we will be losing approximately 100 students from each of those buildings unless there's some major demographic changes within the community. So although this is what we had expected for numbers, they're still continuing to drop, and that will create a challenge for us in terms of a whole bunch of educational programs, staffing. The good news is it may give us some relief in terms of space, give us some options that we can look at. But certainly over the next 7 years, the district will have to be looking very closely at how the enrollment is going to impact how we allocate resources and how we use space. So I think that would be the one thing I would ask us to look at. We will have the projections from the New Hampshire School Boards Association. We went back to those because I believe the board was more familiar and had used the New Hampshire School Board Association projections as opposed to the NESDEC projections. So we'll be having New Hampshire School Board Association projections for you as soon as we can get them, now that we have the October 1 numbers. I think they'll just bear up a general decline in total population over the next 6 or 7 years. The one exception that may or may not come true is the number of new houses that are projected to come into Litchfield, and the number of new apartments in Litchfield, and the number of older 3-bedroom homes that are now on the market being sold, and anecdotally being bought by younger families which have more children. And so that may be a trend which confounds the projections. And just in closing, that trend was noted by the NESDEC and analytic work last year, saying that there was a little bit of a trend that was confounding the projections for declining enrollment. But overall, we're still declining this current year versus last year.
You know, offhand, the number this year, how it compares what the projection was from NHSBA last year?
I don't have that right in front of me. I did look at it quickly. They weren't off that great, but I will get that for you for the next board meeting and give you a comparison to that.
I'm just curious, because I know that they projected pretty low, and that's when we went to the secondary. So I'm just curious how close to 1309 is to what their projection was.
Yep. Yeah, and it was, as a sidebar, Jason and I were talking about, the IT and enrollment and student services and things, not student services, but the student IT system. And he was relating to me how he's had a number of new students that he's had to enter into the program. And so I was kind of anticipating that maybe we wouldn't have quite as numbers as low as what we're having right now, but it is what it is. So, it must just be that we have a lot of migration in and out of the community, but the net is still declining.
Okay. All right. That'll bring us to Mrs. Bickey. District financials.
Yeah, I'll have a full monthly financial report for the next meeting. I just wanted to take a minute and just say that we're full swing into the budget prep. I've had a chance to review with 3 school buildings, along with Mr. O'Neill, to go through where we stand on initial requested budget. I'll be working with Holly over the next couple days to work on the personnel side of the budget, and from there hopefully we'll just keep plugging along, getting towards the budget work session on the 21st. Also brought with us the revised 17-18 tuition rates, which are in the packet, and those are based on the DOE 25, as have been consistent with past practice.
So can those be voted on now?
Yep.
Because I know last time they weren't ready for it.
Yeah, I had to there was a revision that I had to do on the DOE 25 and resubmit, and then based on that, the numbers are adjusted slightly.
I'll make a motion then to accept the Litchfield tuition rates for 2017-2018 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
400.
Mr.
Yep.
I would just like to express my appreciation to the principals and directors and the business administrator. The budget process this year seems to be flowing very smoothly, and I think that it is probably the shortest meetings we've held in terms of reviewing numbers, and we're coming in at a budget that I think would be a very favorable budget, keeping in mind that our primary goal for the year and our primary goal is the implementation of full-day kindergarten in the district for next year.
So one thing I was thinking of today when I saw GMS, Corey, if I can ask, I know we talked about a quad, and we talked about a single.
Yep.
Have we measured yet that?
Yeah,
that area?
we met with the vendor for the modular classroom in the building. They came out along with our general contractor, the fire chief, and the building inspector, and we went through all the dimensions out there. It will go out into the playground
Okay.
pavement a little bit, not by much, I think by about 10 feet. It's
We'd
gonna,
have to move the basketball court?
Yep.
Courts?
so a couple things will have to be moved, some games will have to be repainted in the playground, but
So are they going parallel with the existing one, or?
yeah, it will be, the doors are going to be facing the parking lot and facing the existing modular.
Okay.
So the hallway will be going
All right.
towards the back.
I was looking at it today, and I figured it might be a little tight fitting in there, and then you get the fire hydrant in front of it.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, thank you. I understand you have to leave us.
Yeah, I gotta head home.
Okay,
Thank
have a
you.
good evening. That'll bring us to community forum.
Is it here?
Sure.
Good evening, my name is Laurie, and I live at 3 Chamberlain Drive here in Litchfield, and I have 2 boys, 9th grade and 11th grade. I just wanted to offer some input to the policy that you're reviewing tonight, which is the policy code IMDA regarding school ceremonies. So I was just reading it, and I'm just going to go through it and just give you my 2 cents worth of what I like and my thoughts on it. This policy has to do with religious activities in school, worship, the Pledge of Allegiance, the American flag. So when I was reading it, I had some things that stood out that I wasn't as thrilled with as I would like to be. And I guess I'll just go through it very quickly and offer you my opinion. The first one on that policy is the observance of religious holidays is not the responsibility of public schools. Not quite sure why it has to be stated like that, or why that's in there. There's a lot of other things that aren't the responsibility of public schools that's not so explicitly stated. I think that sets a tone against religious freedom, so I just asked the school board to consider maybe reworking the tone of that sentence. The second one is, since a public school is not a place of worship, the instructional materials, activities that are introduced to the school should not promote any religion. Again, since a public school is not a place of worship, maybe to some it is. I don't think that language is necessary. If you wanted to keep that sentence, I would recommend instructional materials, activities, decorations, or assembly programs that are introduced into schools should not promote any religion. Again, I'm not saying I agree with that. That's just a rewording of that sentence. The third sentence reads, while it is recognized that many activities are initiated with the approach of major holidays, it should be understood that such occasions frequently have religious significance. Care should be taken to relate only to the secular aspects of these holidays. That I found to be disturbing. These are religious holidays. No matter how you want to twist it, bend it, change it, they're religious. For example, Christmas. You're going to celebrate Christmas in schools, you're not going to talk about Santa Claus? Because secular means denoting attitudes, activities, or other things that have no religious or spiritual basis. Santa Claus has a spiritual basis. The candy cane has a spiritual basis. Christmas trees have a spiritual basis. It's a religious holiday. Don't make it something that it's not. St. Patrick's Day, the Shamrock, the Holy Trinity. That's not secular. Even though you want it to be secular, it's not secular. St. Valentine, the patron of love. That's secular, that's Roman Catholic. So to say that you're going to take care to relate these to secular things, I think is impossible. You can't hide the message of Christ in these holidays, even though you may want to. So my thought to that would be that care should be taken to promote the values that are aligned with school values. And believe it or not, a lot of the school values that Camel has is aligned with Christian beliefs.
Sorry, Laura, what was the policy number again?
This is
It's IMDA.
IMDA.
Okay, thanks.
It's on the side.
in the
There.
3A.
Oh,
Agenda.
Again, you have in 3B, pageants, plays, recitals, and other literary or dramatic activities shall not be used to convey religious messages. Again, religious messages, be kind, love one another. Those are right from the 10 Commandments. Are we not going to convey that? So the insistence on using the word religious, I find to be troublesome, because a lot of values that are religious or fall within Christianity are values that we promote as a school district. So to change that sentence, I would recommend pageants, plays, recitals, and other literary or dramatic activities shall be aligned with school values. And then when you get to the Pledge of Allegiance, shall be observed daily. I know you quoted at the end your state statute, but there's also a state statute, RSA 194:15, that I believe should be part of this Litchfield school policy that reads, all students shall be required to respect the rights of those pupils electing to participate in observing the Pledge of Allegiance. That's right from state statute. And again, I think that sends a tone for patriotism that you referenced further down. And I think it would be a nice addition to this particular policy. And number 5, the United States and New Hampshire state flags shall be flown during school hours. Again, there's another state statute, RSA 189:17, that talks about other requirements that the school district is required to have. And I think it would be nice to see that spelled out in this policy as well. And I know we have it in here about exercise of religion, and I'm sure the school board's aware that students in this district should know that they can exercise their right to participate voluntarily in the free exercise of religion. They should be given that 5 minutes per day to have that exercise of free religion in the morning or whenever the school thinks it's appropriate. So in conclusion, I just think the wording of this, the tone that it conveys, is not one that would be inclusive or one that really tries to convey a message of what our values are. I think it's trying to say that we're taking away everything that's religious, but making it secular, and you can't do that. Because those values are inherent. They're universal. Be kind, love one another. Take away Santa Claus, take away gift giving, take away the Christmas tree, take away the candy cane. Even though you want to say those are secular, they're not secular. The message of Christ is there in all of that, and I just think that the wording that I suggested would be better suited for everyone. Thank you.
Anyone else for community forum?
Laura?
Yeah.
Can we just have a copy?
This is my first batch. I can give you a better copy.
You could give us a
Email it to
copy.
me?
Email
Oh,
it to
yeah,
Michelle.
absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Bring us to school board comments.
The building committee is scheduled to meet on a week from today at 6 p.m. back in this warm room. Everybody that's not here that's coming, please bring your snow parker.
Anything else, John?
That's it.
I just have one. We had a meeting with the superintendent, selectmen, and budget committee the other day, and one of the questions I asked, because I posed it here once, as to why we don't have our meetings at town hall. where I think it's a little bit more conducive for meetings. The sound is much better. So the people at home can possibly hear what's being spoken here, because whenever I'm at home and there's a meeting here, I can never hear, like the budget committee, it's nothing but home. And talking to the cable company, it's basically the room, the acoustics and everything else. So it looks like we should be able to work out for the school board and the budget committee to have our meetings at town hall, which I think that room is much more conducive to a meeting setup than this is. So we're hoping that our first meeting will be on the 21st, which is the Saturday, and we'll talk about that further, because I know some people had concerns about the Saturday. But that hopefully we can work out, because it sounds like there might be only a couple of tweaks in the schedule, but that both the budget committee and the school board would be able to meet there.
Why not the 18th?
It's possible,
It's bigger too, isn't it? You can fit more people in it.
yeah. It's more comfortable, it's not freezing. And no offense, Jason, but their internet, we get pretty good too there.
Fair enough.
So,
Probably have cell service too, I bet.
yeah, they do. It's amazing with the police department right there that, some of those services are available. But I think it's very nice of the town to, not have a problem whatsoever with it, and I just think it's a much nicer place to have meetings. All right. So now we have the approval of minutes from September 20th, 2017.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
Stay.
301. And that will bring us to the curriculum report, which is written only, she's not here. And the principal's reports also, we asked GMS and LMS if they could just stay, because we knew that CHS had a couple of subjects that may go a little lengthy or may not. But they were fighting tooth and nail to come to the meetings, but we said no. So, do we want to start with the one-to-one?
Sure. Yeah. So it seems like the year's going pretty good so far. We have teachers are embracing the one-to-one technology. We actually, today, Elliot Bamford actually put out a email. He's going to be starting some basic training twice a month after school for about a half an hour with our teachers. So he's going to really start with the whole Google Suite, Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Classroom, and then he's come up with some other ideas. People also, if people want to request to either do presentations or to learn about something different, those will be done twice a month after school. We've already had a couple of teacher presentations at faculty meetings. So we had Alex Skrelly did a presentation on online plan book. Then we had Kelsey Sullivan, Jen Watson, and Alex Skrelly did a presentation to our faculty on Go Guardian, which is the browser so the teachers can kind of know what their students are doing while they're in class. Jason's actually doing some more training with teachers as we speak on that as well. We have 3 teachers going to a big conference down at Gillette Stadium called MassQ. That's towards the end of the month. Nate Cooper's going, Alex Skrelly, and Kelsey Sullivan. And then they'll be bringing back things to teach the teachers. Students, they seem to be getting acclimated. We did have a few stressed out seniors though. Some of the unintended consequences that we weren't really expecting, but some of the seniors that have their own laptops, they've been using their own laptops for the last 2-3 years. They were a little stressed out about totally switching over to a Chromebook, but they worked through it, so they've switched over, and some of that grumbling's kind of gone away. So other than that, the one thing that I haven't done yet, and I just need to get your thoughts and permission on this, I'm going to poll the teachers at some point towards the end of the semester. Jay and I are going to be doing that. Really what we're going to be surveying the teachers on, what they need, what they want moving forward. So really this semester, again, like I told you in the summer, this was going to be a kind of get them out there, get them used to it, especially the teachers that haven't been doing it, and come up with a list of what they need and what they want for professional development moving forward. The only thing that I'm having trouble with now, and I just want the school board's approval, is the new RSA at the state says that you have to, when you survey students, It has to be either academic, or if it's not academic, you need to send out permissions for parents to opt their kids in, not opt their kids out. So I'm just making sure I'm confirming with the school board that when I survey the students on the one-to-one Chromebooks, that we are considering that an academic survey. I just want that confirmation from you guys, that we're all in agreement that that's an academic survey.
Yep.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Unlike what kind of T-shirts they want at the school store.
This,
Right.
That was the was that
don't
the?
get me
Yeah.
started.
Oh, no, so that was.
That's a whole different
Yes,
conversation.
I understand, okay.
Yeah, so some of the student, we actually have, one of them was gonna come, but he got called into work. The other one's also, and the other two are actually working as well. But we have 3 senior students that are, for their senior project, they're kind of called the Chrome Squad. And today, they actually did, today and then last week, they did PD for the students. And they actually showed them Google Calendar, how to plug things in, how to do different alerts. You can get alerts on your cell phone, you can get alerts through email. They're also going to be doing some digital citizen things. They're going to be doing, they're going to be finding apps for teachers. Actually, Kate Devine is actually interested in having the 3 of them go out and search for an app that really, for her biomed class. So they're going to go out and look for an app for Google. Then they're going to go to Jason, kind of confirm it with him that it's a good app to use. And if it's a good app, IT department approves it, Kate likes it, or class likes it, then it's going to be uploaded so the kids can download it right onto their Chromebook. So those are some of the things that the kids are doing. And this is their senior project as well. So, and then what we're actually talking about doing as well with the 3 of them is on the parent-teacher conference day, actually having them have, almost like the teachers, where we do the online signups for the teachers. We're going to actually hopefully have them have online signups. So if the parents want to come in with their own Chromebook, with their own account, they can ask the 3 of them questions on Google Drive. Oh, how do I log into my kid's Google Drive? Or, different questions. So parents can actually sign up to meet with the 3 of them that day. So those are some of the things that we're doing right now.
Mike, how many teachers right now are like 100% with the program? I mean, understanding and utilizing it.
I think right now that everybody, even some of the teachers, we had this conversation actually, it was you and I and somebody else.
I can't
I forget who it was, but they were surprised at some of the teachers that we thought would push back a little bit are really trying to dive into it and figure this out. So I would say that the majority of the teachers are really putting a hard effort into learning how to use Google Classroom, and some are going to be slower than others, but everyone's really trying to be entrenched in the Google Drive, Google Classroom kind of atmosphere.
And you're getting feedback from students as far as, do they like this type of process?
They do.
I know the younger ones did, who came and shared with us.
The only grumblings that we really had were from that group of seniors, which wasn't a bad grumbling. It was just, they actually were wondering if they could be grandfathered into their own network, so they could still use their laptops, because they saved a lot of documents. So they've been like transferring. I just had a conversation today with a senior, and they've been kind of transferring things over into their Google Cloud, where it might have been saved on their laptop instead of in the cloud. So I think it was just a transition, because it's understandable with the seniors. This is probably the most important semester of their high school career. They're applying for colleges, they're trying to get their GPAs up. So now you're telling them, oh, no, I have to switch over to a Chromebook when I've been using a Mac. For the last 2 years. So that's really the only grumbling from students that I've heard about the Chromebooks.
Yeah, and I think we understand it's a learning process, then.
It is.
It's going to take some time, but I think the benefits just outweigh everything, and by the end of the year,
we're going to hit these little glitches here and there just because we went, at first we were expecting to just do the 130 freshmen, and then now we have 490 something students on Chromebooks. Every teacher got one. So there's glitches here and there, and there's bumps in the road, but we're getting through them. Jay and I talk on a regular basis. So.
Can I offer one observation?
Yep.
To me, I think the really important piece, and Mike alluded to this a little bit when you talked about the resistor teachers and those things, There's been an amazing amount of collaboration amongst the teachers. It's kind of just rippling out in places that you don't expect it to ripple out in. And I think that's a real healthy sign of what's going on amongst the professionals in the building, is that they're not freaking and running away from it, but they're actually committed to looking at it and to talking with each other. And there's a great deal of collaboration in ways that I was kind of surprised initially at how far it's gone with the teachers. And I think that's healthy looking forward, as Mike was saying, looking out to second semester and really figuring out what are the specific needs. They're already doing a whole lot of that work right now amongst themselves.
Yeah, and I think as the teachers, you know, a couple comments that I've gotten from teachers, now that they're learning how to use it, they're realizing, oh, these kids, they can't use the "my dog ate the homework" line anymore because everything is in Google. So submit your paper through Google, you know.
Yeah, right.
And then, you know, we've had some hiccups. Like this morning, I was in the hallway, and it was kind of fun to see. It was a teacher and a student, and she had her Chromebook out, he had his Chromebook out, because somehow his paper didn't get sent to her, but it actually got sent to somebody else, and they were trying to figure it out. And, you know, so they were kind of collaborating verbally and on the computer all at the same time. So, you know, and then the other day we had, I know it was Elliot, and I forget what teacher, but they were working, collaborating. Elliot was showing them how to do Google Drive at 3:15, 3:20 in the afternoon, just the two of them in the classroom. So they're embracing it. People are embracing it.
So are the teachers getting any direction from the students who had it already? Because I know that, like, not...
Some, yes. Yeah.
I would think that. I mean, that was my thought, that, like, the freshmen, sophomores already had it.
Yep.
You know, some of the other teachers, like, hey, I can help
Well,
with
it's
this.
funny
kind of
because
thing.
today we had juniors and seniors in the auditorium, and the three senior boys who were doing the senior project, they did Google Calendar. And as I look around the room, I could kind of pick out the pilot kids.
Yeah.
So, because the pilot kids are like, yeah, we already know this.
Yeah.
You know, they had their Chromebook shut down just watching because they already knew this stuff. So some of them are actually teaching some of the teachers.
Yeah.
So as well.
And we mentioned that when you figure every single student in the high school is going to have one,
Right.
it's forcing the teachers. It's like, okay,
Correct.
here we go.
Yeah, it's forcing the community to go in that direction.
Yep.
And I think some of the teachers are like, I need to get ahead of this before I fall behind, and they know more than I do. So.
So what's the expectations on the teacher side to be up and running on this? I mean, we started the program, 3 or 4 years ago, reviewing it with a plan at that time that pretty much all the teachers in the high school were going to be proficient by now. I mean,
No, by the end of this year.
It only
okay,
started
I won't
with
argue the
one-
date. Well,
one class?
no, but it started way before that through different processes. But so if it is this year, so we should expect all teachers to be using Chromebooks in all of their classrooms beginning in September of next year with no exception. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not sure about putting formal expectations, because I think when that comes about with formal expectations, I would assume that would be almost a contractual issue as well.
Well,
Talk about that.
it's not a contractual issue. We expect our teachers to be using this tool that we as a school board have decided to provide. And I only say this because parents shared with me that, there may be, classes where, well, I don't know if I can really talk about it, but inevitably, one part of the class is using the Chromebooks, and another part of the class are not using the Chromebooks, and it's very confusing because the students are doing, like, they're writing instead of having a merger of, like, our history and our English. Half of that half of that's using Chromebooks and the other half is not. And so that's very difficult for the kids to get papers done and papers turned in and things like that. I mean, that's very, very difficult. And those are some of our biggest classes.
Right, so I will say that by the end of the year, teachers will be trained on Google Classroom, Google Drive, Google Docs. They will know how to use it. I'm not in a position right now to say that we're going to make it an expectation. That's probably not my role to say that at the same time. Also, with the schools that we visited and I've talked to, no school that I know of has made it an expectation that they have to use Google Classroom. Because it's an extension of the education, not replacing education.
So
And you see, we saw that
what
in
do
the
we tell
classroom
our
too.
students? I mean, what do we tell our students that we've just made, and the citizens in which we've just made these investments, and we're looking at making the same investment down into other schools, that our expectations are not, I mean, if a student came in and said, I don't want to use Google Classroom, I'm staying on my Macs, we got to figure it out. What would we do? Today you had seniors who were merging off of a Mac, which, trust me, is better than a Google Chrome in the world out there, and we're asking them to do a little bit of step back. We should have that same expectations for the teachers who are providing, or the people who are providing the education to our students. And I just find it amazing that we're not setting that expectation, because I know from the school board it was that
I think
way.
expectations are different than directives as well.
So you think every single teacher should have a Google Classroom? So the history part of world and the English part of world should each have their individual Google Classrooms? Is that what?
No, what I'm saying is that if those classes are supposedly a commingled classroom, so you could be talking about history but having to write a paper in English about whatever it is they're talking about. Well, if your history part of it is using Google Docs and your English part of it is not, how do the students get their projects and their
Well, I will
stuff
say,
done?
I'm pretty sure I know what two teachers you're talking about, and I will say that English teacher is learning, and she's actually offered up her room for Elliot to hold these year-long.
It's, we have, as a school board, in the summer, made a huge investment in these Chromebooks across the schools, with the idea of continuing that across other classrooms. But if the feeling that I'm getting back is that there's hesitation on the educator's part of it, I have a problem with that.
I don't think so at all. I'm in classrooms all day long, and I see Chromebooks open all day long.
Yeah, I would
Well,
second
and
that.
I think the other piece of that, if I may say something here, is it's not as if I don't expect students to be on their Chromebooks with their teachers throughout each class over the course of the day. There are times and places when you have direct instruction, when you have them watching a video, when you have all those other things occurring. And in some classes, they are far more conducive to the use of Chromebooks than in a tech ed class where you're woodshop and you're doing those types of things. Doesn't lend it very well to using your Chromebook and dealing with the filtration systems and the sawdust and those other things. I think there are practical applications in many of our classes where this stuff will work tremendously well. I think the interesting piece of this is we've had a lot of people who have been very strong and committed to technology, Nate being one of them, and working really hard. But we got 466 students with Chromebooks and 40-some-odd teachers with Chromebooks with the expectation. I know we've had 2 years of prior experience, but that was 2 years of prior experiences with two 40-student cadres of students in this program. Now we're expecting everybody to jump in, and I fully expect that they're going to jump in, but I think that somehow by the end of this year, all of our teachers, I'll use that phrase, are going to be proficient and adept at using these processes. I think, from my perspective, I think this is a 1 to 2 year where you're getting your staff on board and getting them committed and getting them connected. And I think the process is appropriate that we work this half year, doing a lot of the collaborating, which is what we've seen happening, sending people to the conferences to bring back this information and continue the professional development, and further that next year. Because the other piece of this is that the technology is constantly changing. So it isn't a matter of getting to the point and we're there. It's a matter of constantly evolving and providing professional development and doing those things. So I guess I would ask for two things: patience with this, and you're continuing to ask us about these things to make sure that we're staying on top of them. But I'd like to, and maybe this is one way we can sort of point this in a direction, is to go back and find out which of our teachers are 4s, masters and proficient and really strong, which of our teachers consider themselves 3s, which are 2s and which are 1s, basic or not, and maybe bring that information back to you so that you can have a sense of what it looks like among the staff members. That might be an important piece of this.
And I know,
Oh, go ahead.
I don't think
Not-
any teachers are 4 yet.
No, I just had 2 observations. One, it seems like it's a cultural, educational, pedagogical practice change. It's not a small innovation that we're doing. And I think that what you're seeing happen, and I think the immersion of the building with Chromebooks made that cultural change happen much more quickly than it would have happened if we had 50, 100, 200. And I do think that the teachers are working very hard to implement Chromebooks into their pedagogical practices. But I think, like with anything new, when you're doing it, it takes some time to really get fully comfortable and to really fully understand how you use a technology. So from my perspective, I think it's like any of those graphs that you see where we have to get over to a certain point and then we will be fully immersed in it, but I think we're making good progress. I haven't been in the building as much as I'd like to be, but what I understand is that it's being used by the teachers pretty much throughout the building. It may not be that everything, every moment it's used for, but it seems to me like we are using it. My bigger question, I'm certainly very excited and convinced we're using it. My bigger question is, it seems to me that technology fundamentally has one question that has to be answered to me. How are we improving student learning outcomes? And how will you measure the change in student learning outcomes, or how will they be different at the end of this from the beginning? For instance, I would assume that more collaborative learning, more cooperative learning, more critical thinking is going on, but how do we know that? I would assume that the more the 21st century skill sets we look for, college and career-ready skill sets, are enhanced by this kind of a process. How do we know that? Because ultimately it seems we have to go back to our community and say, thank you very much, we had significant expenditure for these, and here's how it helped our children. Here's how it improved education for our kids. And so to me, at the very beginning, we should be defining some of the kinds of metrics we're going to look at to try to get some sense of how are we improving education of our kids. That seems to me to be a major question, not just having it, but how is it improving education. So I would ask that we keep that in mind, and perhaps as we go down the road, kind of think about how do you measure this. It doesn't have to necessarily just be metrics. It could be surveys. It could be other things. I'm not saying it has to be just metrics, but it has to be educational surveys about how we're improving things, and there must be some metrics we can look at. So that's my comment, and I'll keep quiet for at least 2 minutes.
I think I'll add to that I think with any large technology rollout, you're never going to get 100% adoption right in the beginning. And it's not necessarily that people are fighting it, it's that they're busy, they have their jobs to do, they've been doing it for a long time, and they do, maybe not on purpose, but they do kind of fight that change. But I think what you need is, you need champions, you need advocates for the new technology, the new way of doing things, and it sounds like you guys have that. Mm-hmm. So as long as those people keep pushing and keep explaining why it's important and why it's better, they'll eventually catch on. But I think if you do maybe start tracking where people are on the spectrum and just make sure, we're constantly pushing and constantly on top of it, and then make sure we're improving those numbers, I think we're in a good spot.
Absolutely.
yeah,
So
and
Derek, the other question you could probably answer, what Superintendent was just asking. I'm not quite sure, like, if you can measure, like, their utilization and what it's doing, but I would think that it's going to help them further on down the road in life, in business, and by utilizing the tools now. I mean, that's what the world is right now. It's all technology. So,
And I mean, just as a comparison, we rolled out Google Office 2 years ago, I think, and my own company fought it, and we're a tech company. So the fact that we're fighting it is funny. And fast forward 2 years later, we thought about rolling off of it, and people fought because they're so used to using it. It does increase collaboration. It makes things easier to share. You have 100% access to your documents all the time, no matter where you are. You can be on a soccer field, pull up a document on your phone, and it's there. I think so. Once you get to this, you can access your stuff at any time. I get updates every day from my daughter's teachers that use it. She's only in the middle school, so I can see what our assignments are, what was done in class, how many people did the test today, and you're constantly informed, so it's almost like that. It's just that next level of communication that I think is also important. In addition to getting your hands on technology now, because yes, they're going to be immersed in it forever.
Especially once they go off to college. I mean, it's there's so much use. Yeah. All right. Anything else on one-to-one? No? All right.
Thank you.
Yes. That will bring us to high school graduation requirements. Policy IKF, high school graduation requirements. This is a conversation we started last week, that it was proposed or questioned whether or not we should have separate requirements for some individuals in the high school. And we asked, again, Ms. Lonnie going to be here, Ms. Callahan, and Devin to be here, if there were any questions. And I'm not sure who wants to start the conversation. I think the biggest thing that, the first thing the board was concerned about was the numbers who this might affect. And who sets the criteria for who those individuals were,
Yeah.
or are.
Yep. So it's, high school graduation in Campbell is 24 credits. There's a certain outlined number of credits you have to have. The school district here a number of years ago required geometry, which is one of the key sticking points here, to be a graduation requirement for the students at Campbell High School. That's not a state requirement. The state changed their regulations on math in 15-16, I believe it was, and the new regulations say that students have to have four mathematics courses in the high school experience. 3 of those have to be mathematics course. 1 could be another course in which mathematics is a key concept used during the course of the class. So the school district here, we have to identify what those mathematics courses are that don't fall under the traditional mathematics program. However, the real sticking point is the geometry requirement. We have probably in the high school right now 2 to 3 students who it's very clear will not be able to meet the geometry requirement. Typically in the school I was in previous and in other schools around the state, what often happens with those students when they don't meet the graduation requirements is they give them what's called a certificate of completion, a certificate of attendance, or some schools are more moving toward a goals diploma. All right? I'm a little sensitive about that because I'm not sure that a student who meets all the credit requirements and meets all those other requirements but can't pass geometry, I'm not certain why they shouldn't get a Campbell High School diploma if they have 4 math courses during their high school time.
And you're saying there are 2 or 3 in the entire high school right now?
That's my understanding, is 2 to 3 students in the entire high school. So we're talking about a very small number of students. However, there are also other students who could be regular education students who could fall under that category. For example, a student who transfers in, okay, who hasn't taken geometry, comes in halfway through their senior year or comes into their sophomore year and their schedule fills up and all of a sudden they can't take geometry or they can't meet the geometry requirement. So you have those other exceptional circumstances which aren't special education students, but they might fall under this umbrella as well. So I'm in favor of rigor and high standards. No question at all about that. And quite frankly, I was pretty bad at geometry in high school. Okay, but I made it. But I do think, you know, for a number of students, small number, but for a number of our students, I think that's an unfortunate circumstance that they're going to find themselves in, which is they'll get their 4 math credits. But it should, under state law, it should really be about getting to algebra. And that's another piece of this, is you need to pass algebra. For some of our students, they're significantly low. They may not be able to pass algebra as well. So the question is, what do you do with those students? They meet all those other graduation requirements.
So what math classes are you going to substitute that we have on the books?
Yep.
That would, I mean, you got algebra, algebra 1, geometry, pre-calculus, calculus. senior math? I mean, what do you have that is, you know, you can't use chemistry instead, because you gotta have 3 sciences, so they're gonna have earth science, biology, and chemistry, or then, you know, physics would fall into that as
Correct.
one of those classes.
Yep.
But if somebody's having trouble with geometry, I can't believe that physics is going to be the next easiest thing,
Sure.
okay?
Be able to meet the prerequisite to get into physics
Right,
anyway.
right.
You know.
Because you have to have concurrent with pre-calculus or have already passed pre-calculus for physics. But for our students that struggle, they would follow the track of what's we've now called transitions to algebra, which is pre-algebra as a freshman. They would do algebra 1A as a sophomore and algebra 1B as a junior. So now that algebra 1 is spread over a 2-year period. So that's how they would get 3 of their math credits.
Right.
The
But
But
situation we have.
that's not really math credits, that's just giving them 3 years to complete algebra 1.
But there's still math credits. They are math credits, okay? But the other piece to that is you could take a course like accounting or building trades
Personal finance.
or personal finance. Or maybe if you don't want to do the intensive science thing and you do, you know, freshman science, bio, and you do chemistry, your senior year, you may want to take, you know, a different course that will qualify as a math course, but isn't under the math thing. And I'm just looking at all those other various options there for students.
Yeah, I just want to add in, so the graduating class of 2018 will be the first class where geometry is required. So that's why we're having these conversations.
Yep.
I think that when you're looking at the number of students that, not due to any fault of their own, are not necessarily going to be able to obtain successfully completing a geometry class. And by that I mean there's different situations where we might have one-to-one math teacher working with a student to get them to the point where they could take transitions to algebra. And then they take 2 years, algebra 1A and 1B. So they have 4 years of math. And so to penalize them by 1, saying that they can't earn a Campbell High School diploma, and 2, saying, oh yes, if you want that Campbell High School diploma, you're gonna need to come back for a 5th year so you can fulfill the geometry requirement. Or we're gonna send you off to an alternative program where you can meet that needs. And I don't think that's necessary. It's not currently a state requirement. I'd fully support some type of waiver. I think that the conversation regarding the diplomas that we do have needs to be an ongoing conversation and differentiating between diplomas, but for the time being able to have a waiver that is not, it's not watering anything down. Our students work exceptionally hard. I think would suffice the situations that we're facing right at this moment.
So
Well,
we,
you- oh,
okay,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
So you're saying accounting and personal finance also counts as a math credit?
It could, depending on the
That's
will
what
of
you
this
guys are
board.
discussing?
It's elective and business
It's math.
electives at this point.
Right.
So the sticking point is geometry.
That is
So-
the challenge. Yep.
So we made this change in 2014, May of 2014.
Yeah.
And grandfathered everybody else past it except the freshman class that's coming in that's going to graduate this year. So how many students are we talking about that have not met the geometry requirement?
This is,
Well, this year I have 2 seniors completing geometry right now, but only 2. And that was because they struggled along the way and/or were in vocational classes, so it didn't allow in their schedule to even get geometry till senior year. So it's tough for those 2 students who really had that graduation requirement still to meet up until June 5th. But they are doing it, but it's been a struggle to get them to do that, too.
Now, these 2 students, because my understanding is these students would be identified beforehand, either through IEPs or,
The algebra 1 and 2 path,
right.
I would think.
Most would be identified.
So these 2 individuals
These
you're
two
talking
aren't.
about,
They're
they're
taking
taking,
vocational.
were they identified?
They got thrown off because of vocational. I mean,
Okay.
they are still able to do geometry. They don't struggle with math, it's just the way their schedule laid out.
So they wouldn't fall in this category?
They would not,
Okay.
So we don't have any students in jeopardy this year?
not in 2018, no, there's not.
Okay, in 2019?
2.
there's 2 to 3 students in varying stages of their high school career.
And why are they behind in this requirement?
It's not necessarily that they're behind, it's just that their trajectory of the math courses they need to take to successfully meet the competencies in those classes are not going to afford them the opportunity to fulfill the geometry requirement. And we don't want to penalize them by not offering vocational opportunities because they can't get it in.
Vocational is not a requirement for graduation.
Students with educational disabilities need
No, okay, you didn't say that. You said vocational programs. So if they're on IAP or they're in a 504.
Disability or not, to penalize a student and not afford them vocational opportunities because we have a requirement that's stricter than state standards is, I don't know.
Well,
it's cause
Then
for
I guess the better
discussion.
question is the ones you're talking about for 2019. If there was like a set of criteria that them as incoming freshmen, would they have been identified as individuals who could not have taken geometry? The ones we're talking about that would struggle to do geometry?
We knew it freshman year.
Yeah, I was gonna say during their freshman year, we certainly knew by.
Wait a minute, wait a minute.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So these individuals, wait a minute, these individuals we're talking about right now for 19, if you go back to when they were freshmen, because this is what we're talking about, you're identifying students that you know down the road will not be able to take geometry. Would these individuals have met your criteria that they would not have taken it? Or is it because of other courses or things they've done through the last 3 years of high school?
So it's varying things. So conversations happen all of the times. The students that I'm thinking of, there's conversations the moment they enter into the high school about what their strengths and weaknesses and formulating a plan for them to achieve the high school graduation requirements. So we think outside the box, we provide different opportunities and so forth. And, you know, we hope for a particular outcome. And in one particular instance, it's not, you know, we have to move along with the pace of the student as well and what they're learning.
Okay.
The other thing is that we have students that have special education resource room support every day and not every other day. So already that's taking up an entire block, and it's needed so that they can successfully complete the requirements of all of their classes. In addition to vocational opportunities, you have students that visual perceptual, which is a huge component of geometry, is such a significant deficit for them that being able to visualize these geometric
I
shapes,
understand it,
like
but
there's
that-
different things.
No, I
So
understand
when
it, but
this
that's
went into
what I'm
place,
trying to
right?
find out is, again, these students you're talking about not going to year 2019, if we flash back when they were freshmen, incoming freshmen, like, do you have any freshmen right now that you've identified that will not be able to take geometry? Or is it too early as freshmen?
Yeah, usually by the time semester one ends, we start seeing some of that come
So
out.
these two individuals, if it's two graduating 19, has that been identified over like the last couple of years that they can't do geometry? Or would not be able to
I
do
think
geometry?
this is where this conversation has come from, is we've put plans in place and we've gotten to the point where
You know they can't.
the
Yeah,
track
but-
that they're
but-
currently
but-
on is not going to.
But they're not, I'm not hearing, and maybe I'm not understanding, I'm not hearing you say that they're not capable of completing geometry. I hear you saying they weren't able to take geometry because they wanted to do other things.
No.
I'm trying to say that.
Well,
May not be
the
saying
four
it
people,
well.
the four kids they identified, when they were asked the question if they were on any special services programs, the answer was no. So if the students are
Yes.
identified as freshmen or whatever, I mean, you know, the two students that are doing geometry this year are because they were doing vocational.
Right,
And
that was
then
their choice.
basically it was, when Brian asked the question, it was the same thing. Well, they're doing vocational, doing other things. They're not, it's not like they came in and took pre-algebra, and then algebra A, and then algebra B, and now they're in geometry in their senior year. It's that they took algebra 1, and then went and did other things.
But those two students, John, are in question right now because they
We're
said
not
they.
talking
I understand that, but
But I'm trying to find out, I'm trying to find out about
They're doing
the others.
geometry, it isn't an
Right,
issue.
that's different. Those kids
Yeah.
are different from the ones that we're talking about.
They're not identified.
We're talking about students that are
Identified. Exception.
unfortunately
Exception.
struggled to count
Exceptional.
money.
Right.
So the question
They say.
again is, how many of these students, I mean, if we're having this conversation, it must be because there must be a group of students that have been identified. But 4 students that you've identified are two students that you've identified. Well, 2 for this year, 2 for
No, but
next
this year is
Well,
just.
this one doesn't.
Well, this year's gonna be, yeah, this year's fine, so the 2 for next
2019
year.
we're talking about.
Are they, so they've not completed Algebra 1 yet, those students, for next year?
They must be in it now. Algebra 1A or B? No. B.
They would, if everything falls into place, they would be on track to complete the second part of algebra, what would be their senior year.
And students behind them? Are there any others identified? Because you said 2 or 3 in the entire school, so it's maybe one other individual?
We would anticipate down the road,
Algebra
absolutely, there'll be
two.
more coming through.
Towards the end of freshman year, we'll be able to.
What did they do the other
Right.
year?
How many schools require geometry for graduation?
In Algebra 1.
So that's 3 years.
None that I'm aware
What
of.
did they do the
Is
other
this-
year?
I mean-
Oh, I know, Tommy's taking.
We started doing this, I think it was, we said 2014, when we were, I mean, admittedly on a kick to increase rigor, increase STEAM education and stuff like that. Did we get ahead of ourselves? Do we forget about the fact that there are lots of job opportunities for people that aren't gonna be, you know, the next tech industry titans? Like, I'm involved in a lot of like Stay Work Play things and tech sector partnerships and stuff like that. There's a lot of advanced manufacturing jobs, a lot of CAD jobs, a lot of stuff like that. Companies like Hitchner and Hypertherm in New Hampshire, where you can come out of a tech school making $50,000 a year. Are we getting ahead of ourselves and requiring every student to need geometry? Is it a silly goal?
I don't think it's a silly goal.
I'm just asking.
But at the same time, I understand that there's individuals who can't. And I.
Right.
By no fault of their own.
Right.
Correct.
They cannot do it.
Now, the 2 individuals are seniors this year.
I'm not talking about them,
Right,
I'm talking about the
they're
kids
taking
next
it
year.
and they- Right.
Right.
It's the other individuals that I personally don't think that we should stop them from receiving a Campbell High School diploma simply because they've been identified that they're not capable of accomplishing that. And it's unfair that then they have to like take off and go to Londonderry and then graduate from Londonderry, if that's the case, or else. And if we're only talking a couple of individuals, that
Is it, they just struggle with math? Is it just strictly a math thing? I mean, again, I'm back to the same question. Are they in a special services program, or are they a student who just struggles with math?
or is it both?
I think, well, I'm thinking about the question, it's kind of a loaded question, because I'm talking about 2 to 3 students that I'm aware of now, all having different situations. And I'm sitting here saying that I've been part of team discussions, I've reviewed everything, and aside from having them return for a 5th year or send them someplace else to earn their diploma, which I think both are silly, that we really need to have.
An alternative diploma?
No, a waiver. It's not
a
a state
waiver?
requirement. So why, they shouldn't receive a diploma that's an alternate standards diploma
You know,
when.
nothing for nothing, taking 3 years of the same class and getting 3 credits for it is really, I think, stretching the RSA also. You know, no offense, but taking 3 years and getting 3 math credits to complete 1 year of Algebra 1.
They're just going slower. They're
I
covering the
understand
same
that,
amount of
but-
material. They're
but-
just moving
but
slower than
I understand that, but they're
other
getting a full
students.
credit. They're getting a full credit for
They're
pre-algebra,
working
they're
just
getting a
as hard
credit
as a
for...
kid who blows through it in a year.
John, can I just weigh in a little bit? I think there are people that can take calculus and do it in 1 year in high school. I think there are some kids that can't do calculus in 1 year in high school. They might need 2 or 3 years to do calculus or something. So I think that if you take a child who's working to their capacity, and their capacity is to take calculus as a senior, that's wonderful. But we have some children that don't have the capacity to take calculus, let alone take geometry when they're in their high school career. So I think that we should not penalize people who are working very hard, who might take a longer period of time to complete a particular course. So that if it takes a child 2 years to complete an Algebra 1 course, and we've got professionals who are saying, that is a good thing, that's their capacity. They should take 2 years, they'll get a credit for each year. I think that's a good thing. We're not talking about a large population of kids that we're looking for waivers for. We're talking about 1, 2, 3 kids, maybe not even that many on a given year. This year, 0, maybe next year, 1 or 2. And we would ask the professionals in the district, the recommendation from guidance and special ed, the approval of the principal, and to have a really tight screening. Other than that, we're not trying to change the rigor of Campbell High School diploma, and we're not trying to say necessarily we want to drop geometry. We're saying that we want to have an alternative way for some of these children who cannot, because of circumstances, complete geometry within a 4-year time frame, to have the opportunity to get a Campbell High School diploma if it is deemed appropriate by guidance, by SPED, and by the high school principal. That's what we're really looking for. I mean, to say that every course we teach, every course has to have the equivalent amount of information in it, it's just not going to happen. There's different English courses, there's different math courses. They just don't have the equivalent information because you have different kids that learn different amount of knowledge in different classes.
But what makes, why math? Why not English? Why not social studies? Why not, well, when does it stop? When does it stop? No, wait a minute. We had lengthy, Derek, we had lengthy conversations about this from the administration pushing the school board for this rigor, okay? It came from the administration. And we had lengthy arguments about this at the time that we had this discussion. And the school board was the one that requested the geometry, and it went back for a while as it percolated through the process with the administration and stuff. And that was at about the same time that we were making the changes with putting Algebra 1 at LMS so that students would have that opportunity. We're making all the changes in math, and we're asking to, I just feel that we're asking to be watering down the math program.
It's two exceptional students.
I understand those two, but actually, I'm probably not as much upset about geometry requirement as the fact that we're giving 3 credits of math to get through 1 year of math in that. So, but that's fine. That's my personal problem with that, because I can guarantee you that wasn't how, when we discussed it in the process and we set up the pre-math, was not anywhere near what the school board agreed to at that time, or really. Well, we haven't seen a math curriculum for 8 years, so that's either here or there. But we wanted to set up a program, and we agreed with making some stuff more rigorous at the LMS to try to help students. My understanding was that at some point in time that the pre-algebra program was going to go away, and it was just going to be Algebra 1 in that process. So, there just seems to, it seems that, it seems that people want to make some changes. But at the same time, if we're going to make these changes, then we need to see what the math curriculum is going to be like and what the expectations are going to be able to do that. And how we're going to be able to manage any student, whether they're awesome in math or not, what their process is going to be to get to the 4 years of math. Through that, a student comes in, takes Algebra 1 the first year, and then takes accounting, how to count your money, whatever. 3 easiest courses in the world, and they're done with their math.
Not for everybody.
John, that's not what we're discussing here. And you asked as far as different courses, and the only course in question is geometry right now. And because it's been identified that there are certain individuals that just cannot grasp geometry and do it. Geometry is, we're not looking to take it out of the requirements, not looking to change the requirements, but when you have a couple of individuals that have been identified that can't handle the concept of it, yet can still meet all the rest of the requirements of...
So they're still going to have to hit 24 credits.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Nothing, they're looking for nothing else to change. It's the geometry that's a stumbling block for these kids. And when you only identify 2 students, and they're still taking math courses through the course of the year, granted, they're stretched out, but if they weren't stretched out, they wouldn't be able to take them.
Well, you did the pre-algebra in the middle school for a certain group of kids. Not everybody qualified for that, and they're just moving a little slower than some of the other kids. That's why there's no leveling anymore. You need to have slower moving classes
Well,
for
I
a
just
certain
equate it
population.
to, I'm gonna jump to college here, right? So somebody completes their nursing degree in 4 years and somebody takes 6 years. It doesn't make them any less of a nurse. They just needed additional time.
Just poor.
Just poor,
You anticipating something, Mr. Chairman?
The same. So, Devin, I guess I have to ask, because like John was saying, and Derek, that, you know, I remember like discussing this the 4 years ago. What was it? That never came up, so I'm just wondering, is it just something we're just identifying now because geometry was a requirement?
I don't recall ever being part of any conversation around the addition of geometry requirement, because I might have had a couple of
Okay.
thoughts to add to that.
I think we talked about this, and this being an issue.
That it might be an issue with.
I was trying to find the minutes, but I can't find it. Do you remember when we approved this?
May.
A very difficult task that I will accomplish, but not tonight.
We approved it in May of 2014.
May 2014.
So it would have been a discussion probably,
4 months before that.
I would say from September 2013 through May of 2014, they could have probably kept popping its head up.
I just want to emphasize, I think geometry is a good requirement for 96, 97, 98% of our children.
Exactly.
I just think there has to be a little bit of, I don't know what word to use, empathy,
Leniency.
whatever, for those 2% of our children that are working as hard as they possibly can for 4 years, and they need a little bit of empathy to say, you can get a Campbell High School diploma. If the guidance, the special ed, and the principal agree that you're busting your tail, not the kid who's going to come in and try to use the system. No, we're not trying to give them a break.
Right.
Maintain the rigor for those kids. Just those kids, we need to have a little bit of a different perspective. I have a friend in a reverse way that used to say, it's kind of like you start everybody at the top of the mountain, and some of them go down the black, and some of them go down the, I don't know, blue, and some go down green, and some, I would be on, what's a bunny trail, white? It would take me about a day and a half, the lodge. It would take me about a day and a half to get down, and Bill might be in the black diamonds, and he'd be down in 10 seconds. Well, just the reverse. Some of our kids can ski, so to speak, up the mountain on the black, and they're up there in 10 seconds. Other kids, they take a lot longer to get there. They're still going to get there. And I think we have to take that into consideration. And I don't want to water down Campbell diploma, and I don't think we want to make the vast majority of our kids have an easy road through high school. That's not the goal. I just think a little empathy perhaps for some of our children that just take a little bit more time.
Mr. Chairman, these students 5, 6, 8, 10 years ago would drop out of high school. They would be shunned aside. They would get a certificate of completion or a certificate of attendance, maybe, for exceptional student, but they wouldn't get a diploma. And here we're talking about students who meet the graduation requirements, okay, who, however, cannot pass with a really challenging course. They may not even be able to pass it throughout their lifetimes in terms of their difficulties with those concepts. I just think that's not right. In my heart, it's not right.
So in order to, if we were to grant these students the ability not to take geometry, would we have to, like, write another policy? Do we just vote
You'd
for
have to change, you'd have to.
add it to the policy?
You would have to modify the policy, so I think they would have to come back with some writing for that.
Yeah.
And if I might, I think,
Cross out, no.
I think, again, we're looking for a process that would ensure that the experts in terms of guidance and special ed are recommending this, and the high school principal is approving it, so that it would be something that would be very, very, very small number of children on any given year that would have very good documentation as to why we want to recommend this or why we want to do this. But I would think we'd want to have a very tight process that would ensure that rigor remains at Campbell at the same level it is now, but perhaps we have a little bit more empathy for those couple of kids that might really deserve it. That's all I'm saying.
Devin, I would think that you wouldn't be able to, like, sit down and say, well, here are the requirements that you would have to see, or the situation, because I think they would all be different, correct? I
They'd be
mean, you wouldn't be able to, like, have a listing
It'd
of
be file
criteria.
review, you know,
Right, it's gonna be a
looking
little
at
bit of
their,
everything.
the courses they've taken.
So the language would have to be put in here that the administration team would have to identify these students.
That's,
And I think it would be helpful, if I may, to have that not just be Bill Lonigan and Devin and Jody, but have a teacher involved in a special ed case coordinator or something along those lines, involved in that conversation, just to make sure that we're all really on the same page and that we're in agreement that those circumstances are appropriate for that student. So I think, yes, my having final approval, certainly, but I think you need to make sure that you have a representative group of staff involved in that decision-making.
So do we need to make a motion to change?
I think that they just have to
Just
take
bring it to us?
Yeah.
So if you'd like to, Ms. Lonigan, get together with everyone and then Michelle and get some verbiage in here, and then we can bring it back to the board and take a vote on it.
Sure,
But,
absolutely.
I mean, I understand, I mean, I've heard several conversations, I've talked to the superintendent several times on this matter, and it just seems that for the few children that we're talking about that are identified, that I think it would be unfair to not allow them to have a Campbell High School diploma, simply because they're not capable of accomplishing what we've set forth. And again, it's one subject we're talking about. I know that we set the standards pretty high as far as what our expectations are for the graduating class, but that was for good reason, that we want to send them off to college ready to go and prepared.
Not to be a pain. So this is what it says in the RSA. Mathematics that encompass algebra, mathematical modeling, statistics, and probability, complex applications of measurement, applied geometry, graphical presentation, interpretation, statistics, and data analysis. 3 credits. That's the requirement. Do they get that out of Algebra 1 only?
I think to some degree, and that's a relative term based on the students we're talking about,
Right.
because of severe limitations.
So I think that the administration needs to work on reviewing all the classes that are in the math program and try to get to the school board the math curriculum so that we can determine whether or not students, all of our students, are getting to those requirements that are a requirement by the state for graduation. That whether the classes that we are teaching, and if they're not, then we need to work on fixing the curriculum so the students are meeting these criteria.
what I would say to that, John, is absolutely we can do that. At the same time, what I would say is that in a spiraling curriculum, those things are taught in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th grade. It's not something which you independently teach, okay, we're going to teach applied geometry here. No, it might be that you're doing applied geometry in the middle school with an angel food cake. I don't know. So what I'm saying to you is it seems to me that when we take a look at are we teaching those things within the education of all of our children, yes. Are they all going down the black diamonds? No.
And I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that we need to follow what the state requires for graduation. And so before the school board should be changing our graduation requirements or adding a change to our graduation, that the math curriculum that we've been looking for a while should be provided to the school board that we can see that what we've asked to be
Fair enough.
part of the 7th and 8th grade students, so
Fair
that
enough.
they are better prepared to get into the high school, so that I mean, the whole idea of pushing more math rigor into the LMS school was to try to help the high school. And if we're not, okay.
That's a whole
That's a
separate
whole
thing.
nother subject, but they're all tied together, because what I'm sensing is that for a small percentage of students, math is still a struggle, but at the same time, if you take a look at our math scores across the district, we're just fairly average, and and maybe that is because we're not being as robust in the math teaching as we need to be. And I understand it's hard. I understand math is hard, and I understand math's not for everybody. But at the same time, some of us, English was hard, and spelling was hard, and social study was hard, and we all had to fight and work our way through it. It fathoms me to think that even if we waive the geometry, that how a student that has to have 3 years of science and 4 years of English, how that same student's getting those same requirements done successfully.
The same way. They have foundations community classes now. We have foundations freshman science and foundations biology, so those kids get that extra assistance in those classes as well. And they are really two different topics. The state of New Hampshire says everybody needs to pass algebra. What we're teaching here is a curriculum, I agree. Yeah, let's get that more transparent, but it's just about geometry. What we're teaching is almost irrelevant to whether you're going to waive it for that small group of kids. Yes, we do need to get that curriculum out here to be reviewed, but it is attached, but yet it's separate as well.
I know but it would be much easier to take a look at the math curriculum and sit there and say, okay, we can see how this is all progressing and how it's all one picture. I don't see the picture. I see a request, but I don't see the picture.
Can I just didn't the curriculum director bring the math curriculum before the board last spring, and didn't the board vote to accept it?
No, we did.
I believe if you go
Yes.
back in your minutes, you'll find that the curriculum director brought the curriculum before the board last spring, and the board voted to accept it, but I'm not sure if it was the entire pre-K through 12 or what it was, but I believe that you had the curriculum in front of you last
Did
spring.
it in 2 parts.
Right,
What was it,
algebra
in
1
two
She did it in 2 parts, and then it all got approved.
I can go back and check that, but I believe you did approve curriculum last spring.
Yeah, 1A and 1B was approved as 2 separate courses.
Okay. But I mean, I thought the entire math curriculum was brought before the board, not just 1A and 1B.
I thought it was
It
also.
was.
And I thought the entire math curriculum was approved by the board last spring, when the curriculum director
Refined
before the board.
curriculum.
I could be wrong,
It is.
but
Okay. Anything else? No. All right. Like I said, you guys can get together and get us some language, and
Yeah.
we'll go from there.
absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That brings Jason. You had a little tidbit for us on GPA.
Something came up earlier last week about grade point average and how does somebody find out what a student's current GPA is right now. And during that process, we found that you can't have a current GPA unless the grades are closed. So we have that 2 parts. Semester 1 grades closed, and you have a grade for there, and then in semester 2, the grades close. So they're posted official grades. So the thing is, right now it's an in progress grade. And those grades can fluctuate, especially based on is the students hitting those requirements or not. So those numbers are kind of off, and there's no real way to calculate an in-progress grade. It just fluctuates constantly, and it's not official in any way. But along that road of finding that out, we did also notice that there really was no real way for the parents to see how the student has progressed in their years at Campbell. So Andrea went and added a new report in the portal that will allow the parents to get an unofficial transcript. So say they've completed 2 years at Campbell, they'll have those two years, all of their official grades, and then they can just look at their in-progress grade and see if they're on track or how they're doing in those courses until those are posted. So so we did find that along the way. So when they go in and they look at their in-progress grades, those are going to be yellow when they're looking at the portal, but once they're posted, they're going to be green, and those are official once guidance goes over everything and makes them official.
Like that.
Right.
That's in progress.
Exactly. Yep.
So my question on that was, and I appreciate the report because it made it a little easier, was that how does a student that if a class is not an honors class, but they do an honors project, how does I didn't see how that gets reflected in that report that you added, or even when you do a grade at the end of the semester. Because if a student took Spanish and they did the world on the honors thing, so they did an agreement with the teacher, and they got an A, it just says they got an A, but shouldn't they have gotten 0.5 added to that A, so it could have become an A plus or something like that? And that's not showing
You
in
don't
Infinite
know.
Campus.
You don't get to see that side of the numbers. That's a user side on our end that we would see the bump up, John, but as a parent, you would see an H next to the class, so you know your child then received the honors option bump.
But I looked at Joshua's and I didn't see any H's, and I know that he took honor classes last year. So, I mean, if you could just take a look at that. I mean, I tried to log in real quick and it wasn't being nice to me, so.
Say that again,
Somebody
so if your
changed.
child is taking an honors class, it's
An honors option.
option,
The
oh, all right.
options are hard, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Because
I
if
look
it's an
at him-
honors class,
I
it
don't,
should happen just automatically.
In
Like
honors
if they-
class, it's already, Andrea goes in and she provides the
Honors
proper
geometry.
weight. If it's an honors class, it already
Okay.
gets weighted differently. If it's an unweighted class, like a Spanish 2, that gets its own weight as a 4.0. In your case, I do see an H next to Spanish 2
Okay.
in your son's class, so that designates that he did receive the honors option and got a nice 4.5 instead of a 4.0 in that class, so.
But does it, like he did it for concert band? And he did, I don't know if
Yeah,
he did it for
H
nothing?
concert
Okay.
band, he did it in semester 2.
Okay.
Yeah, so it does show an H there. So if
Okay.
you're not seeing that on the parent side, if you want to drop me an email, I can talk to Andrea and see if there's a way to
Okay.
do it. But I'm looking at him right now.
And I guess the
And
other
that was
question
last
is,
year.
another thing would be, how do you as a parent, as you're looking at the grades and everything, it just says it's a GPA of 3.75 or whatever it may be. How do you know if he got he or she got the proper credits and that's correct? I mean, because all you do is you, in this case, if I looked at his GPA and I used his grades from last year,
Yeah.
I would get what I calculated would be the 3.75. But if he got the honors things, it could be higher than that. But I don't know how as a parent to stay on top of that for my student. And I don't really think we want 400 students calling guidance every time we have grades coming out.
Well, they do. Sometimes I get call at home too, but that's beside the point.
Well, I won't call you at home.
Well, That's all right, John, if anybody else does in town, no worries.
I haven't done that yet. I just want to go on the record.
And I won't call, I'll just stop by.
Well, really, that is our job. That is our job in the office, to make sure that every single student's grades and the teachers will let us know if their student did an honors option. They let us know that. So then Michelle, my admin assistant, has to go in to each student and add that in, because there's no way that Andrea Stern can identify who does an honors option. So Michelle will go in and provide that additional bump in their GPA. Do you know if that happened? No.
I don't.
Well, I check her work. That makes you feel any better.
No, I'm not questioning, I'm just, as a parent, you know, I would want to see the 4.5 points. I would want to, if you're going to give me, I would like to see, the points that are being associated with whatever, if it's a B plus.
Can I
that
show
they
you a
were-
version?
You can. You can email it to me if you want to on,
So that version that we see on my end, I don't know if that's possible for a parent view.
I'll have to check with Andrea on
So you
that.
see the regular unweighted 4.0. You
Right,
see
because
the-
right
Because
now
the
it's
report-
only showing
the
the
report is
weighted
unweighted.
GPA.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the unofficial transcript report that we added has the weighted GPA in
It
it.
has the weighted, right.
Yeah.
So it would include anything there, but if you look at this, the side that I get to see, you see the weighted and the unweighted values there. So that's, I think, what John is saying. He wants to be able to distinguish between the two to make sure that he in fact got that as a parent.
Let me double check with Andrea, but I'm sure if she can do weighted, she can also do an unweighted. It would just be an additional report, but I don't want to speak for her.
no, that's fine. I mean, it's just, you know, I had my first experience in Naviance today, so that was
Just wait till next
very
year, John.
eye-opening.
You'll have more fun in a year from
Yes.
now. But, yeah, if I don't do my job right, feel free to ask
I won't call
Jim
you.
or Bill to.
I'll just call
hand me,
Brian
it's
and have him go
fine.
knock on the door.
Let's drive down.
I got the magic wand to make me disappear, so it's all right. But I do always double check. The teachers check, then Michelle goes in and checks, and then I double check. So it took forever the last day of
Well, I mean,
school, but-
it would be much easier for everybody if the system was more automated, and I understand.
A lot.
I'm not a fan of Infinite Campus, but that wasn't my decision either. So Power School is definitely more visible, but this is what we've got. But I'm sure there's got to be something that Andrea can.
Yeah, if there
do.
can, if not, I mean, sometimes they can go and create custom things, but we've looked into that, and they can range from $5,000 to $20,000 to do
Yeah.
custom
Andrew, we're
reports
gonna
for
call
us.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm just
depending on
gonna
how
move.
fancy you want it to be, but one of these things we might be able to, at least have both the weighted and unweighted GPA, if we can do that, whatever we can do to help.
Thank you very much. That'll bring us to second readings of several policies. The first is ACE, procedural safeguards, non-discrimination on the basis of handicap and disability.
I don't have anything to add to these,
No.
Mr. Chair. It's pretty much,
I just copied from last.
it's the same thing. This is the federal state law changes, that we're just putting these federal and state law requirements now into this policy. There's nothing else, unless you folks have a particular language or concern or anything like that. We certainly, I just want to thank very much the members of the staff for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm not sure as how they're needed any at this point in time.
Unless you want to look at
So
policies with
if you
us.
want to listen to policy and things like
Oh,
that,
thank you.
pay for administrators.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, much appreciated. So this is just, another reading. We haven't made any changes, and I don't believe you have, and I think it's been vetted pretty well. Pretty much that can be stated for all of these, I believe.
Yep.
I don't think there's really much change, or any changes that have been made since our last reading, nor have we received any feedback except for the discussion tonight by one of the citizens.
Make a motion to accept ACE as written. Or is changed?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, signify by saying aye. All those in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
And the minutes and public records, again, it's just to be in compliance with the new RSA up in Concord today at Grapponi. We had the annual legal conference, and all of these things were reviewed again, and it's just to be in compliance.
Make motion to approve?
BEDG? Second.
BEDG.
Huh?
BEDG.
A second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Liz, are you voting on this one or no?
I missed the whole thing.
Okay.
BEDG. Second read of
Second reading of BEDG.
minutes and public records.
Oh, aye.
4-0.
Yes.
Before you continue, I need to ask the board, now that you've approved that policy, to rescind policy KBA.
Thank you.
Public's right to know.
That was next.
Make a motion to rescind policy KBA.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next is EBBC, emergency care and first aid.
Now, this was a policy that there was discussion about in terms of opioid antagonists, and I don't know where the board is at this point in time. We did have the nurses in, we did have the nurses discuss this, so it's just a question of how the board feels about this particular policy.
It's not in, oh, there it is, relative possession. If it was important to have it, the police would have it. Our police officers do not carry it. I don't think our school should
They're
have
one
it.
of, like, very few police departments that don't.
We would be one of the only schools that does have it.
Really? Manchester doesn't carry it, or Nashville, or anyone?
I believe they do.
Yeah,
I-
Manchester
Maybe
has it,
Manchester.
Nashua.
Manchester and Nashua, I know.
Bedford
Has
doesn't,
it.
Hudson doesn't.
Rochester has it.
Who's
There are a lot
How
of
many
schools-
overdoses have we had in this town?
A lot.
Yes,
A lot.
Have we had any deaths?
Yes.
I guess why not? Why not?
It's here. I'm sorry to say, but it is here.
I guess why wouldn't we want to have it? Like, how's it different than? Obviously, it's different than just an EpiPen, but
Similar.
it's a life-saving technique.
Yep.
But why would we want our school to have that responsibility when we have police officers and we have first responders?
It's not the schools that have it, it'd be the nurses.
Well, why would we want, they're here to,
Because by the time the police got here, that person could be
Fire
dead.
department, yeah.
are we talking about students
Could
overdosing?
be students,
Could
or could be somebody on our property.
So
Could be a
if
teacher.
I was a drug user, I could come onto our property and shoot up or do
Well, I don't know
whatever.
that you'd
I
want to do that just for that. but-
It's a drug-free zone.
Yes, they didn't read the time.
To me, the reality of New Hampshire is that there is an opioid epidemic going on in New Hampshire, and all communities are impacted by the opioid epidemic, and I'm not going to say all families, but many families within communities are epidemic, and I don't think it's based on income or demographics. I think it's just out there. It's very, very serious. For our public schools to have the capacity to save somebody who's could be saved by an opioid antagonist, I think that is probably an honorable thing to do. And I do understand your concern. At the same time, I think that it would be the right thing to do in terms of if, God forbid, a student or an adult were in our schools and we could keep them from dying.
Then why don't the police carry it?
I can't.
I'd be interested, why don't we have a DARE officer in our school then? We don't have a DARE officer in any of our schools. And I don't mean to sound nasty, but
DARE
if it was such a problem, why don't we have a presence here in the school district?
The problem that we don't talk about.
I think it was.
We should have a DARE officer in the school.
I think it was proved that DARE didn't actually have any effect. Is why DARE was canceled altogether. Like, it's not a program anymore.
It's a program in other school districts.
Like DARE itself, like DARE to keep kids off drugs or whatever.
Yeah, I think.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think like the federal government like stopped it.
I would agree with Derek's note. I think DARE has had some criticism in terms of its impact. I think the SRO that we had at the high school, the position hasn't been filled due to certain reasons, but I think that there is a need to recognize the need for some kind of training, some kind of teaching, some kind of education for our
Project
kids.
Safeguard isn't cutting it then. That's the only thing I know. If we're having this epidemic in town, the only drug training I've heard of is Project Safeguard. And what's that, 7th grade, 6th grade?
7th grade.
7th grade,
It's a one-day field trip, yeah.
yeah.
Again,
It's not to say that we
It's-
couldn't use more programs, Liz, but I mean,
Yeah.
we're getting like off subject here,
Okay,
so.
I mean, may I say
just
one thing,
voicing
Mr.
my
Chair?
opinion.
I think it's not a public schools issue. It occurs in public schools. Public schools have your children 180 days a year for 7 hours a day. There's 365 days in the year and 24 hours in each day. I think it is a community problem. I think it is a state, national problem. However, the public schools are the only institution left where we have large populations of children for long periods of time, and I think the reason why these kinds of issues come to public schools is because we're one of the few institutions that has large groups of people. But it's really a cultural problem. I mean, I am not an expert, but certainly it's a cultural, it's a values, it's a community
I would
problem.
like the police department to weigh in on it personally. I want to know I want statistics, I want to know why they don't carry it and why we should.
You have to ask them.
I will.
I'm surprised they don't carry it. I've done police ride-alongs in
Londonderry
Manchester.
doesn't carry it.
I've done police ride-alongs in Manchester and watched them give it to people. Like, people are literally on the floor dead.
Oh, yeah,
They gave
my
it to
kids
them.
saw that
They were
last time we
standing
were in
up
Manchester.
Half, 30 seconds later, they're standing up, walking around. But when I was in high school in Londonderry, which wasn't that long ago, we had a drug and alcohol counselor.
Yeah,
It was a problem
The
then. It's
Londonderry
still a
Police
problem.
Station is right across the street from the high school, too.
but they don't have Narcan. They don't carry it. I know that for a fact.
All right. I want to make a motion to accept policy EBBC.
So, so I was reading in the, I'll second your motion, but I just want to have a quick discussion on this. So, in one of our schools, they're doing CPR training, which I think is great, that we're teaching many, many people to do CPR training. However, we have additionally the school nurse or staff members certified in first aid and CPR. So how far are we going to pry the door open for training? See, I don't want to see, if we're going to give this to the nurses, I'm okay with that because that's their job, and I imagine, I'm hoping that when they're not there, whatever nurse we're bringing in for that day as our substitute nurse must have the same skills or whatever.
Well, you have
But if we
you have
begin
go
to
through-
open
you
it
have to go
up,
through training, John.
okay, but let's say we begin to open it up and we have, principals, athletic directors who probably have first aid and probably have CPR, and all of a sudden the nurse is not around, is the expectation going to be that somebody who has a staff member who's certified in first aid and CPR, whichever that person is, now have an expectation that they should be the ones that now have to provide this? And so, I'm for having this, first of all, but I'm concerned about opening the door to a vast number of people trained and then with the expectations of giving it, and what that may do if for whatever reason they do it and it doesn't work. You understand? That's just my thought on this process,
Just
Like
make
for
it
being
two
sued?
sentences. Just make it two
Well,
sentences then.
or whatever the issue may be, something doesn't go right.
Just break it out then, so only the school nurse can administer it. Just make it two sentences.
I would think that anybody who's trained in it, John, it'd be their decision to do it. I mean, you can't mandate someone to do it, but it'd be their conscience. I mean,
Well,
if I'm
they have
trained-
to be
if I'm trained in
certified in
if I'm
this.
trained in CPR and someone's on the ground and I could perform CPR and I decide not to, I mean, that's my choice.
I understand, understand. You know, I'm not the one that's gonna have to administer it, so I'm just at the
we
same
could train you.
time. What?
We could train you.
Yeah, I don't wanna learn.
No.
I just don't wanna, if we're gonna have it, that's great, but we shouldn't be trying to cross-train the population in the school to be able to administer it. And that bit doesn't have to be
That's fair
spelled out,
enough. I
doesn't have to be
understand,
spelled
yeah.
out here. That's more of an administrative thing, Jim, in the sense that, you know,
So if Nurse Baker isn't here, you don't want Mike Perez giving out,
I don't want him to be second in line, you know,
No.
in that sense.
well, he,
So that's just sort of.
And again, he wouldn't be.
Well, he could be if he's certified in first aid and CPR.
As far as perform CPR, you're referring to?
oh, we talking about CPR or
No.
Narcan?
Additionally, the school nurse or staff member certified in first aid and CPR may also administer epinephrine or an opiate whatever the word is.
Right, if they go through they'd have to go through a process of training
Okay,
in order
but
to do
it-
so. But then,
Just for
so
that?
that, they have to be their decision if they want to,
Yes.
you wouldn't go through the training.
Is that now a training of CPR? Do you learn how to administer that in CPR? Do you
No.
learn how to administer that in first aid?
No, it's a separate
It's a
course
special
altogether. They have to
training.
go
But
through.
that's not what our paragraph says. Our paragraph says you gotta be certified in first aid or CPR, not administering an opiate antagonist or whatever. So I'm just saying, I don't know if it's written exactly the way we want it, but, so. But I believe in having it here, Jim. I'm just,
So you're talking about Narcan, like if someone were to pass out, I would think it would be if you knew how to do CPR as a person, as a human being, you would want to help. It isn't like administering a drug.
Correct.
I would think twice about shooting some kid's thigh with an EpiPen not being trained.
Can I clarify something?
Yep.
The paragraph that John is referring to does not state that they are able to administer the opioid antagonist. It's just first aid and CPR. If you look 2 paragraphs down, it tells you who.
yeah, but read that paragraph.
I
It
did.
says, additionally, the school nurse or staff member certified in first aid and CPR may also administer
In
epinephrine
the
or
second paragraph?
well, I don't know how, it's underneath the
He's referencing-
italicized
Oh,
paragraph.
additionally, the school nurse.
Right
I'm
here.
sorry, I thought you were talking about the one before it.
No.
Additionally, the school nurse, staff member, certified CPR may also. If appropriate, right. But the paragraph before says they have to have the proper training.
Then why do we need that paragraph?
So maybe it falls in the certified first aid.
So if they get sued, if they don't administer the drug right, it will be covered under our insurance because they've been trained?
I believe the law stipulates that anyone who administers, for lack of a better word, Narcan,
Yeah.
is not, and something is
not
not
liable.
liable.
It's a good Samaritan law, I believe.
That's the word, that's,
I mean, obviously, it is a question which school boards are wrestling with and communities are wrestling with in terms of where they want to come down on this. I think that if we have a nurse who is trained, and if we have some other folks who are thoroughly trained and have proper certifications, and you, God forbid, did have an overdose where a person is probably legally dead, and you could revive them by Narcan, I think it's something, if we had trained people, that we should do. I understand John's argument. I think that it would have to be very closely monitored. Certainly, the school nurse would be trained, and by your policy, one additional person in each building would have to be trained. Beyond that, I'm not looking to train 30 or 40 people in each building. But, I mean, the training is for CPR and Narcan, but I think that it would be appropriate to have the nurse and one other person in each building trained for that.
There's a motion and a second on the table. Further conversation? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting policy EBBC/JLCE, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
310. Let us know what the police say.
I will let you know about the police
All right.
thing.
Our next policy is IMDA.
Carry it now, too.
Can you just table that one?
IMDA is the policy, we had some conversation on this.
It is coming.
Just to be able to see,
If anyone responds.
no, what Ms. Gandy had provided us in written, so we can see it how it's written
Appropriate
into
form.
the policy and
She
stuff.
made some valid points.
That's appropriate.
Yeah,
She really
so,
did.
rather than have a lengthy discussion, why don't we
Almost
just
inquire
table
for
it
legal
for the
reasons.
18th?
I'm not prepared to comment on what her points were
No.
at this point
I,
either.
yeah, I'm not.
I know this comes from the New Hampshire School Board Association, and they have legal counsel there.
Well, they do. The policy, it's not a new policy. It's been a policy for a long time in the district. However, the new parts are at the end. Those are the only parts, so I was, those new parts are with the Constitution Day and that stuff.
Right.
But the policy, as it
Has been
stood
there.
before that,
Right.
was never changed. So, but absolutely table it so I can see
Yeah, I'd like to
where
read
the
it.
applications.
'Cause I still have a problem that the candy cane's religious, but I'd like to read what she says.
I'm going to send you.
It's the staff of the shepherds, my man.
You know,
It is.
they have straight ones now, though.
Yeah, but they didn't
I'm
back
not
then.
walking down this road.
No, I
I'm getting away from this one really quick.
Jim's like,
We're gonna have a religious discussion here in the board.
no. But I agree with you, John. I'd like to read what she's,
He's trying to be diplomatic, Brian.
I know.
Really?
It's the candy cane.
You're gonna have a problem with the candy corn.
All right, we'll table that until we have an opportunity to look at her notes. So our next policy is JCA, change of school or assignment. It's pretty straightforward.
And again, that's response to RSA 193:3 regarding, to clarify, the placement or change of school assignment must be approved by the board. That just adds the board as the approver of that, on that particular piece.
I'll make a motion to accept policy JCA as written.
I second.
Further discussion?
oh, no, sorry. Getting ahead of myself, I'm getting excited.
Premature.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the last is policy BCAB, school
No,
board.
I just have to ask a question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
Was this a policy, or was this just a recommendation?
I believe it was a recommendation.
I don't believe it was actually a formal policy, it was more a recommendation. Is that my recollection correct
Yeah, I
on that?
thought you were just going to add it to the Code of Ethics as an addendum.
Which one?
JCA?
No,
We're talking.
BCAB.
BCA.
That was just,
Okay.
right, that was
Facebook
just,
can hold the school board.
that one is not, right, that is not a policy, because we talked about first a policy, then, no, just,
Right,
yes.
the board approved it as a first reading, so do you just want to just formally approve it to be
Yeah.
added?
Yeah. I formally approve it. Does everyone else have to?
I can take the policy code off.
We already rescinded
Actually, it's
Casey.
just, in every year, it's just gonna have to be handed out to the board.
Right.
In March and say, this is this is the direction that previous boards
Code of
have
ethics.
used for social media.
Mm-hmm.
Please use your best discretion.
And the last,
What about clarifying he or she's speaking as an individual member of the board and not, oh, okay, as an individual member.
It's in there.
I thought it was like an individual person. I was like, how do you differentiate that? But, okay, yeah, makes sense.
As long as we don't talk about school stuff, then we can be an individual. But when we talk about school stuff, we become a school board member.
I just avoid talking about school stuff altogether.
Fair enough.
No, members, no, keep the member there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, I read it too quickly.
and then we have a revision on IJOC volunteers.
This is just There's about 4 different things, revised to include and define requirements for high school student volunteers who wish to volunteer at other schools in the district. Revision occurred when questions arose about high school students who wish to volunteer for programs at the elementary school. And the policy and law requires that designated volunteers to complete a background check. Depending on the situation, these students may not be categorized as designated volunteers. What that means is that I would think that they are not, for the most part, characterized as designated volunteers because they're working within a teacher or they're working within a designated volunteer supervision, so they're not going to be working with children by themselves. However, if they were working with children by themselves, then they may become designated volunteers. Is that correct?
So are those bullet points ands or ors?
Ands. I probably should put them in there.
Okay.
We currently have, a couple of situations where high school kids are going to be working with kids in other buildings, and so we just need clarification of how we're going to treat high school students with regards to whether or not they're designated volunteers. And clearly, if they were to be with younger children by themselves without any other teacher or designated volunteer around, then we would have to treat a high school student as if it was a designated volunteer and go through a background check, although the background check is moot because they're probably juveniles and there is no criminal background check.
Right.
So it's kind of a, circle.
I don't think I did a background check when
Comment?
I did Nature's Classroom.
What?
I don't think I did. Maybe I did.
Yeah.
And legal,
I don't recall
just so
doing it.
they know.
Yeah, this was reviewed with principals and legal
Well, she
counsel,
got
so
to
it's
go.
not just coming from the SAU.
Do they do that?
I don't know. That's why I can't. That's why I was asking if they're ands or ors. I don't recall if I had a background check when I went to Nature's Classroom, and I would have met all of those.
You probably didn't
I did.
because you had one when you became a board member.
Oh, I did.
You did a background check on us?
You ought to see what I found out. I haven't said anything yet.
Wait till you speak out against something that's really important, Lance.
Wow.
Remember those parties?
Yes, I do.
So,
No, it's to your point, it is interesting that a parent who is with children by themselves at Nature's Classroom would have to have a background check, clearly.
It meets all these
Clearly,
requirements. Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah, they do. We background
And we
check.
would-
Maybe I did have one. I can't remember.
But
I
that
know
would be a
you did,
requirement.
Because I fingerprinted you.
I'll make a motion to
Well, that's why it's easier to
accept.
have teachers do chaperones.
Say
I
what?
think like in the New York trip, only teachers go on New York trips and stuff like that.
The problem is there's no male teachers in the 6th grade.
Yeah.
I mean, but
They don't need background checks, teachers don't.
like the Hawaii trip that we had, you had parents who went, who had to be designated volunteers because they couldn't be, so they had to have criminal background checks.
Just like coaches.
Not only that, it's paid $4,000.
Yeah.
Or
And they
whatever.
should be happy about it.
We have our wrestling coaches, we do background checks on our,
Oh, yeah,
our
oh, yeah.
Soccer
youth ones,
coaches.
yeah.
And the general principle is whenever an adult is going to be with children by themselves, if they're not a teacher, they have to have and the teachers have a criminal background check, they have to have a criminal background check.
All right, I'll make a motion to accept the revisions on policy IJOC.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
And that's the last of our policies. And it brings us to the manifest. Are we all set with signatures up there?
Do we have 3 signatures on the
No.
We will in a
need a
minute.
pen?
Yeah. I have them in somewhere.
There's a blue pen.
That'll bring us to public input.
Derek?
Non-public?
From what?
Non-public.
Good evening, Natalie Hurdy, 14 Munn Street. A couple of things I'd like to say. First of all, I'd like to address, Mr. York, your comments about how you're not happy with the thought that somebody who takes 2 or 3 years to do a class should not get 3 credits. I don't mean this with any disrespect, but to me, it shows that you are lacking maybe knowledge of special needs children. And the reason I say that is my son, as all of you know by now, is special needs. His biggest challenge is processing speed. He's at the 9th percentile. So in a room of 100 kids, 91 kids are faster than he is. He does right now the same work as other kids with some assistance, but when he goes home and does homework, what takes another kid 10 minutes can take him an hour. So it might be taking him longer to do the same class where others get 1 credit for that class instead of 2 or 3. However, his intellectual, mental output to get that done is probably 2-3 times what they need because they're lucky they don't have that challenge. So I think for a student like that to be penalized, to work maybe harder for that extent, to be penalized by not getting a credit for every year it takes him or her to take that class would be detrimental to that student and quite frankly insulting to a parent who works with those kids. That's my personal opinion. Second thing for me, I'm kind of disappointed that Jody and Mr. Lonig and Mr. Perez are gone because when we've been talking about the waiver and whatnot, or you have been talking about the waiver, which I think is great, I think that it's great that our school strives to push our kids to go as high as they possibly can. But I would be curious to find out, especially Jody, who is an amazing guidance counselor who knows her students so well, I'd be curious to find out of all of the students in this school, how many of those, let's say, for example, you've got the kid who wants to become an auto mechanic. He lives and breathes, wants to become an auto mechanic. Why does he need to do that college path? Well, that's not his or hers chosen path. Now, I understand. I've already had my discussion with my husband. He's like, well, what if he changes his mind and wants to go to college later? Guess what? By then, he or she will be motivated, and then we'll take the classes. They're so young. So what if they're not taking the classes at that time for the college path? Maybe they're lacking maturity. Maybe they're lacking interest. Maybe they just need to get out there, get the basic diploma that the state offers, like the criterions of the state, get out there and realize, I want to go to college. How can we not think that those children, or those students who may be in high school were miserable doing these classes, suddenly because they're motivated and more mature, go, okay, I'm going to go take those classes I'm missing now, and by God, I will become a mechanical engineer instead. So what if they get it at 30 instead of 21 or 22? It's their path. And I think it behooves us as parents and as educators to start to listen more closely to what our kids want. Because I think that if you have, like, we all know those kids who are, I am going to be a doctor from the moment they're 5, and darn it, they keep going and they get the classes, they get the top grades, and they do it. But you have those kids who are like, I hate school, I hate being there, I want to be somewhere working with my hands. Why, if the state requires only a half credit of, let's say, world history, why do I force 1 full credit on them? Give them the half credit, and then let them take something that will go with their passion. You'll get better grades as a district because now you have kids who are engaged, who are happy to go to school, instead of fighting with them and then maybe them also having attitude problems when they're in school. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
I fully agree with the idea that we have to find ways to make education both challenging and interesting and enjoyable for children. But starting in the 1990s, one of the things that we as educators started to realize was that those skill sets that you need for college in today's career environment are almost the same. They're not really much different. Those career and college skill sets are pretty parallel. So when I see that the board and the high school has focused on making our children have rigorous courses, I think in many ways that's a very good thing, because I think the skill sets aren't differentiated between college and career. You talked about auto mechanics today, but the great deal of auto mechanic work today is done on computers. There's constant changes in the computers and technical reading and the capacity to work with computers is critical to be successful as an auto mechanic.
They
So-
don't need to know how to program.
Yes, I agree. So mathematics, language arts, science, I believe, to the extent that it's possible, every child who graduates from Campbell should graduate with those skill sets they need to be successful, college or career, and I think they're almost identical today.
And I don't disagree, but again, I go back to the fact that, for example, the state requires, let's say if the state, I don't remember off the top of my head, but let's say if the state requires only 2 credits of science, and if we require 3, why not just give those children the opportunity of just follow the state minimums? Because I'm assuming, maybe I'm naive, but I'm assuming that if the state requires certain minimums, that should follow, they should be getting the basics so that they can go into the career world. If it's not, then something needs to happen at the state level if our kids aren't ready with that.
And I don't want to have a prolonged
No, okay.
conversation, but I think the state minimum is a minimum. I think that what we have is a much more reasonable outcome for our students in terms of what we expect them to have.
But
And-
as an educator, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. And if you'd like to come in, I think this could be a longer conversation,
I'm sure.
so my
I
door is
just,
open, so just give me a call.
Thanks, I guess I'm just, again, I'm not an educator, and I guess I'm just trying to understand of having known children who graduated my daughter's year, they felt the pressure of going the college route, and after 1 semester, they realized that is not what they wanted, they quit, but even with that 1 semester, they have several $1,000s of debt. So I find I find that our school tends to, or not just us, I mean, when I say our schools, I should say, tend to push a path that's not for everyone, which I think is irresponsible fiscally towards them as well. But also, I find that we tend to poo-poo the trades. And the trades are very important. I think there's a certain snobism against the plumber, the electrician, the mechanic, the hairstylist, the whatever else is out there. And our society can't function without them. I think we need to find a happy medium somewhere to keep engaged and happy those children, those students who are interested in that line, just like the school district has worked immensely hard at making sure that those students who want to be on that college path are well prepared and are stimulated educationally. But I think there's a disconnect somewhere that we're losing kids who are not necessarily special needs kids, but it's just that their passion lies elsewhere. That's all.
Anyone else for public input?
Nate Cooperelli, President. I was not at the last meeting, so you may have addressed it. I just wasn't sure if publicly if there was any decisions made on the formulation of the superintendent search committee in terms of who would be on that and then how that process would unfold. And I don't know if this is the proper venue to address it, but I wanted to bring it forward because certainly our members, I think community members had some questions and I just wanted to relay them. So.
We actually did discuss in the last meeting.
To your point, Nate, we did do a survey, which I believe you've seen, and the survey data is getting put together now, and we have started the advertising for the position, and we certainly are putting together the committee members, and we certainly intend to have a conversation with the president of the Teachers Association and with the president of the Support Staff Association about membership on that committee. So that is the intent. We just haven't taken that step yet, but we will be talking with both of you folks about membership from your respective groups.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything from non-public?
Before we go, so in our curriculum letter today, there was a beautiful section in there of math review summary at CHS.
Mm-hmm.
That if we read through this, really talks a lot about what we talked about tonight on math.
Mm-hmm.
And So when I read this and I hear what was presented today, there's a disconnect between what the curriculum director is providing us in information about the math program and what the guidance principal and special services director is trying to talk about that. I mean, you know, basically talking about the vertical alignment with 7th and 8th grade math curriculum and added an advanced class math 7H, which is a pre-algebra class taken in 1 year offered to 7th and 8th graders that meet the criteria. Students can take Algebra 1 and receive high school credit for that course. There was a restructuring in 7th and 8th grade math at the middle school, which will facilitate placement of these students in the math classes at the high school. In addition, students taking Algebra 1 8th grade are taking the same midterm and things like that. It seems that, you know, our whole idea behind what's happening in the middle school was to make sure that those students were coming better prepared because of the issues that the high school said was occurring in 2014 and before. I mean, so, I mean, there are some suggestions in here. I think the board should take a look at some of the math team requests for future planning. They would like to schedule PSA, SAT study time or semester-long prep classes for it. Narrower competencies to return to the original number. I don't really had a question about that. I don't really know what that means right there. Continue working on affordable alignment of grades 5 through 12. I think that's a great idea that should be encouraged. That the, you know, as I see it, the director of math at the high school should be the director of math through all the schools. I mean, because whatever's being learned in the elementary school is going to affect the middle school, is going to affect the high school, and the director of math in the high school, whichever teacher that is probably best equipped in that process. They wanted to extend math class time from 45 minutes to 60 minutes to 90 minutes. I've talked about, you know, the looking at LMS and turning it into a very similar block classes like here. Since they don't use bells and stuff like that, they just move kids from classroom. I think that would be a great idea to begin to
I don't think middle schoolers could stay still for 90 minutes at a time.
So they get up for 5 minutes after 45 minutes and they sit back down.
Oh,
that's all they do. Wait a minute.
They can't do that. I dare you to go sit up
gosh.
there and expect a 11-year-old boy to sit still for 90 minutes. Can
So
your
he-
son sit
so-
still
so
for
he
90 minutes?
sits-
He can't.
So, but listen to me.
Yeah.
So they go to their class.
Yeah.
They go through their 45 minutes of class.
Mhm.
They get up. They walk into another class. It takes them 4 or 5 minutes to transfer. They sit down for another 45 minutes. So if in the middle of the class you got to get up and clap your hands, stomp your feet, and scream and holler, well,
So they're going
It's not
to
that-
so let them do that.
It's not that simple.
You let them do that?
Again, John, I know what you're saying, but these are just requests or for future planning, and
I
this is just a thought process. But, all right. So, did you have anything for non-public? 'Cause I think we're all set.
I didn't.
No. Motion to adjourn.
So made.
Get your non-public minutes.
So made or seconded?
Hold on, wait, can't adjourn yet.
No.
I didn't think there were any.
I didn't think there were any.
There were no motions, but there were minutes.
Oh, were there?
Approval of non-public minutes from September 20th, 2017.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstain. 3-0-1. Motion to adjourn.
So made.
I can't.
Adjourn. There was one thing that I just want to shoot by you.